Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, also spelled Ramakrishna Paramahansa, born Gadadhar Chattopadhyay, was an Indian Hindu mystic and religious leader who lived in the 19th century Bengal. He adhered to various religious practices from Bhakti Yoga, Tantra, Advaita Vedanta, as well as from Islam and Christianity, before proclaiming that the world's various religions are so many paths to reach one and the same goal. Ramakrishna's followers came to regard him as an avatara, or divine incarnation, as did some of the prominent Hindu scholars of his day. He said, "I have practiced all religions, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, and I have also followed the paths of the different Hindu sects. I have found that it is the same God toward whom all are directing their steps, though along different paths. You must try all beliefs and traverse all the different ways once. Wherever I look, I see men quarreling in the name of religion, Hindus, Mohammedans, Brahmos, Vaishnavas, and the rest. But they never reflect that he who is called Krishna is also called Siva, and bears the name of the primal energy, Jesus, and Allah as well, the same Rama with 1,000 names. A lake has several ghats. At one, the Hindus take water in pitchers and call it jal, at another the Mussalmans take water in leather bags and call it pani. At a third the Christians call it water. Can we imagine that it is not jal, but only pani, or water? How ridiculous! The substance is one under different names, and everyone is seeking the same substance, only climate, temperament, and name create differences. Let each man follow his own path. If he sincerely and ardently wishes to know God, peace be unto him, he will surely realize him." Ramakrishna, who experienced spiritual ecstasies from a young age, started his spiritual journey as a priest at the Dakshineshwar Kali temple, built by Rani Rashmoni. Soon his mystical temperament gained him a widespread acknowledgement amongst the general public as a guru, attracting to him various religious teachers, social leaders, Bengali elites, and common people alike. He eventually taught his disciples, who later formed the monastic Ramakrishna order. 8. After his death, his chief disciple Swami Vivekanand popularized his ideas, and founded the Ramakrishna Math, which provides spiritual training for monastics and householder devotees, and the Ramakrishna Mission, to provide charity, social work and education. Birth and childhood. Sri Ramakrishna was born on the 18th of February 1836, in the village of Kamapukur, in the Hooghly district of West Bengal, India, into a very poor, pious, and orthodox Bengali Brahmin family. He was the fourth and the youngest child of his parents. His father was named Shudiram Chattopadhyay, born in 1775, and mother Chandramani Devi, born in 1791. The couple's first son, Ramkumar, is said to have been born in 1805. A daughter, Katyayani, was born 5 years later, and a second son, Rameshwar, in 1826. The parents of Ramakrishna are said to have experienced supernatural incidents and visions regarding his birth. In Gaya, his father Khudiram had a dream in which Bhagwan Gadadhara, a form of Lord Vishnu, told him that he would be born as his son. Chandramani Devi is said to have had a vision of light entering her womb from the lingam in Yogidhar Shiv Mandir. The family was devoted to Hindu god Rama. The family deity was Sri Raghubir, an epithet of Rama, and the male children of Khudiram and Chandramani were given names that started with Ram or Rama, Ramkumar, Rameshwar, and Ramakrishna. There has been some dispute about the origin of the name Ramakrishna, but there is evidence which proves beyond doubt that the name Ramakrishna was given to him by his father. Ramakrishna confirmed this himself, as recorded in M.S. diaries. "I was a pet child of my father. He used to call me Ramakrishna Babu." First spiritual experience around the age of 6 or 7, Ramakrishna experienced his first moment of spiritual trance. One morning, while walking along the narrow ridges of a paddy field, eating some puffed rice from a small basket, he came across the sight of a flock of milky white cranes, flying against the background of heavy rain-laden black clouds, which soon covered the entire sky. The ensuing sight was so beautiful that he got absorbed into it and lost all his outer consciousness, before falling down with the rice scattered all over. People nearby who saw this came to his rescue and carried him home. He reportedly had experiences of a similar nature a few other times in his childhood, while worshipping the goddess Vishalakshi, and portraying the god Shiva in a drama during the Shivaratri festival. At age 9, in accordance with Brahminical tradition, the sacred thread was vested on him, thus making him eligible for conducting ritual worship. He would later help his family in performing worship of their deities. Ramakrishna was raised in Kamarpukur and was sent to the village school where he learned to read and write, but he later lost interest in this bread-winning education. Ramakrishna had practically no formal education and spoke ungrammatical imperfect Bengali with a rustic accent, though he could read and write in Bengali. Kamarpukur, being a transit point on well-established pilgrimage routes to Puri, brought him into contact with renunciate saints and holy men. He became well-versed in the Puranas, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Bhagavata Purana, hearing them from the wandering monks and the Kathaks, a class of men in ancient India who preached and sang the Puranas. Ramakrishna's father died in 1843, a loss which he felt very strongly, making him more reticent. Sometimes, visiting the nearby cremation ground alone, he would practice spiritual disciplines there. 18. At this stage, the family responsibilities fell on his elder brother, Ramkumar, who was about 31 years older than him. When Ramakrishna was in his teens, as the family's financial position worsened, Ramkumar started a Sanskrit school in Calcutta, Jhamapukur Lane, whilst also serving as a priest there. Ramakrishna moved to Calcutta in 1852 along with his brother to assist him in the priestly work. Priesthood and marriage lead up to priesthood in 19th century Calcutta. There lived Rani Rasmani, a feisty and wealthy widow with 4 daughters. She was the first of many prominent women who played a major role in the life of Ramakrishna. Inheriting property from her husband, she managed to endear herself to the people of the city, through her exceptional managerial skills of the estate, resistance against the British authorities and through her various philanthropic works. Well known for her kindness, benevolence to the poor, and also for her religious devotion, she was much loved and revered by all, and proved herself to be worthy of the title, Rani. Being an ardent devotee of the goddess Kali, she had the words, Shri Rasmani Dasi, longing for the feet of Kali, inscribed in her estate's official seal. After having a vision of the goddess Kali, in a dream on the night before her departure for a pilgrimage to the Hindu holy city of Kashi, she founded the now famous Dakshineshwar Kali temple. Reportedly in the dream, the goddess instructed her that instead of visiting Kashi, she had better set up a stone idol of the goddess at a beautiful place on the banks of the Bhagirathi river, and make arrangements for the daily worship and prasada offering there. Then she would manifest in the deity and receive her worship. With great delight, the Rani bought a large piece of land on the banks of Hooghly river at Dakshineshwar and started the construction of the 9-spired temple, where pilgrims could congregate to catch a glimpse of the goddess. However, being born into a Kasi Kevarta family, she was deemed unworthy by local Brahmins to make food offerings to Kali. But it was her heart's desire to offer prasada to the deity of Kali, and if she did so going against the norms of Brahmanical society of that time, then no devotees would visit that temple, nor would a Kulin Brahmin priest officiate there. To find a scriptural solution to her problem, the Rani sought the written opinions of various pundits from different parts of the country, however none of them were in her favor. When all hope was seemingly lost, she received a letter from Ramkumar, who assured her that scriptural principles would be observed intact if she made a gift of the property to a Brahmin, who could then install the deity and make arrangements for food offerings. No blemish would then be incurred by anyone who partook of the prasada there. When she agreed to these conditions, she displayed savviness in working around the rigidities of caste privileges while apparently adhering to its restrictions. The Rani decided to consecrate the temple and proceeded with her plans. While the search for priest was on, a Brahmin named Mahesh Chandra Chattopadhyay, who worked on the estate of the Rani, and her secretary Ramdhan Ghosh, both of whom were well acquainted with Ramkumar, requested him to officiate as a priest at the Rani's temple, albeit temporarily. The devout Ramkumar agreed, and when Rani installed the Black Kali image on the last day of May, 1855, he became her chief priest. In search for living, which was made more difficult by Ramakrishna's unwillingness to engage in worldly affairs, Ramkumar summoned him to Calcutta and turned to Rani Rashmoni. Ramakrishna initially perceived such patronage as an affront to his dignity and tried to deter his elder brother from doing so by reminding him how their father never officiated in the ceremonies of the purported lower castes, but the will of Ramkumar prevailed in this matter. In spite of having Brahmanical authority since beginning, every religious Hindu, irrespective of caste, creed and class, had access to this temple. Officiation as priest Dakshineshwar Kali temple, built under the aegis of Rani Rasmani in 1855. Sri Ramakrishna lived a major part of his life here. On Thursday, May 31, 1855, Ramkumar, in the presence of his brother Ramakrishna, officiated at the dedication ceremony of the Dakshineshwar Kali temple. Within 3 months after the consecration of the temple, Mathur Babu, the Rani's right-hand man, much impressed by Ramakrishna, appointed him with the task of dressing the deity of Kali and Hriday, the 16-year-old nephew of Ramakrishna, as an assistant to both him and Ramkumar. Ramkumar began to teach his brother the mode of worship and service of the goddess in the hope that he might perform them in his absence. To initiate him properly, a sadhaka of Shakti, named Kenaram Bhattacharya, was invited. He was apparently charmed to see the religious fervor in Ramakrishna, who became ecstatic as soon as a mantra was recited in his ear. In order to get him accustomed, Ramkumar later employed Ramakrishna on few occasions to perform the worship of Kali. As Ramkumar grew old and infirm to carry out the difficult duties at the Kali temple, Mathur, with the permission of the Rani, requested him to move to the Vishnu temple in the complex for conducting worship, and appointed Ramakrishna to the office of priest. Ramkumar was glad with this arrangement, and after serving for 1 year since the consecration of the temple, he died suddenly while preparing to go home on leave, in 1856. Vision of Mother Kali, deity of Ma Kali in the Garbhagriha of the Dakshineshwar Kali temple. At age 20, Ramakrishna, who by now had witnessed more than one death in his family, realizing the utter impermanence of life, became more engrossed in the worship of the Mother. After the daily worship, he would sit in the temple looking intently at the deity and get absorbed in her, before losing himself in devotion whilst singing with a profound emotion the songs composed by devotees like Ramprasad and Kamalakanta. He regarded their songs as an aid in his worship, and was certain about getting the vision of the Mother as Ramprasad did. With an ardent heart he would say, "Thou showed thyself to Ramprasad, Mother, why then shouldst thou not reveal thyself to me? I don't want wealth, friends, relatives, enjoyment of pleasure, and the like. Do show thyself to me." Being averse to wasting any time, after the closure of temple during midday or at night, he would visit the nearby jungle to think and meditate on the Mother. Before meditating, he would put down his clothes and the sacred thread aside, and meditate completely naked. When Hriday, his nephew, found this out, he confronted him for a reason to explain his strange conduct. Ramakrishna explained him that when one thinks about God, one should be free from all attachments and the 8 servitudes of hatred, fear, shame, aversion, egoism, vanity, noble descent, and good conduct. He viewed his sacred thread as a display of the ego, of his Brahman descent, and thus kept it aside, saying when calling upon the mother, one should discard all such bondages and call her in with a focused mind. He assured his nephew that he would put them on after the end of his meditation. Hriday was aghast at hearing this and left him in dismay. In this way, he spent his days and nights altogether in prayer, singing and meditation, while his longing for her vision kept increasing daily. It was not long before that people around the temple started noticing his passion and adherence in devotion, which was quite unperturbed by the opinions of people around him. The Rani was informed by her son-in-law, Mathur thus, "We have got an extraordinary worshipper. The goddess will be awakened very soon." As the days passed, Ramakrishna's food intake and sleep gradually declined, and when not engaged in either worship or meditation, he was seen to be in a state of turmoil over whether he would have a vision of the mother. Seeing the evening sun, he would cry, "Mother, another day is gone and still I have not seen you." Eventually he would question, "Are you true, mother, or is it all a fabrication of my mind, mere poetry without reality? If you do exist, why can't I see you?" In time, his longing for her vision became extreme, and was engaged in either worship or meditation for almost 24 hours a day. Despaired, and feeling an unbearable pain at the thought that he might never have her vision, one day, as he later recounted, "In my agony I said to myself, what is the use of this life? Suddenly my eyes fell on the sword that hangs in the temple. I decided to end my life with it then and there. Like a madman I ran to it and seized it. And then, I had a marvelous vision of the mother and fell down unconscious." He became overwhelmed, and before fainting, observed that to his spiritual sight, houses, doors, temples and everything else around vanishing into an empty void, and what I saw was a boundless infinite conscious sea of light. However far and in whatever direction I looked, I found a continuous succession of effulgent waves coming forward, raging and storming from all sides with a great speed. Very soon they fell on me and made me sink to the unknown bottom. I panted, struggled and fell unconscious. I did not know what happened then in the external world, how that day and the next slipped away. But, in my heart of hearts, there was flowing a current of intense bliss, never experienced before, and I had the immediate knowledge of the light that was Mother. When he regained back his consciousness, he was found, uttering the word, "Ma, Mother," repeatedly in an aching voice. Thoroughly convinced of her existence, Ramakrishna now lived at her abode, all the time, and like a child disinclined to leave its mother, so was he to leave his divine mother. Hovering in an ocean of bliss, he guided various seekers to the mother, realizing one cannot experience it anywhere but from her. Enquired as to why he called the deity a mother, he answered that it was because the child is most free with the mother, and she alone can cherish the child more than anyone else. People around him noted that he engaged in talks of spiritual matters alone and never any worldly issues, and while talking about Kali the Divine Mother, he would simply cry and be elated. When someone once asked him about Kali worship, he said, "I do not worship Kali made of clay and straw. My mother is the conscious principle. My mother is pure Satchidananda, existence, knowledge, bliss absolute. That which is infinite and deep is always dark-colored. The extensive sky is dark-colored and so is the deep sea. My Kali is infinite, all-pervading, and consciousness itself." Marriage Sharada Devi, 1853–1920, wife and spiritual counterpart of Ramakrishna. Rumors spread to Kamapukur that Ramakrishna became unstable as a result of his spiritual practices at Dakshineshwar. Ramakrishna's mother and his elder brother, Rameshwar, decided to get Ramakrishna married, thinking that marriage would be a good steadying influence upon him, by forcing him to take up responsibilities, and keep his attention on normal affairs rather than on his spiritual practices and visions. Ramakrishna himself mentioned that they could find the bride at the house of Ramchandra Mukherjee in Jerambati, 3 miles to the northwest of Kamapukur. The 5-year-old bride, Saradamani Mukhopadhyay, later known as Sharada Devi, she is also considered an avatar, was found, and the marriage was duly solemnized in 1859. Ramakrishna was 23 at this point, but this age difference for marriage was typical for 19th century rural Bengal. They later spent 3 months together in Kamapukur when Sharada Devi was 14, and Ramakrishna 32. Ramakrishna became a very influential figure in Sharada's life, and she became a strong follower of his teachings. After the marriage, Sharada stayed at Jerambati and joined Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar at the age of 18. By the time his bride joined him, Ramakrishna had already embraced the monastic life of a sannyasi. The marriage was never consummated. As a priest, Ramakrishna performed the ritual ceremony, the Shodashi Puja, in his room, where he worshipped his wife, Sharada Devi, as the Divine Mother. Ramakrishna regarded Sharada Devi as the Divine Mother in person, addressing her as the Holy Mother, and it was by this name that she was known to Ramakrishna's disciples. Sharada Devi outlived Ramakrishna by 34 years and played an important role in the nascent religious movement. As a part of practicing a spiritual mood, called Madhura Bhavar Sadhana, Ramakrishna dressed and behaved as a woman. Disciple Mahendranath Gupta quotes the master as follows: "How can a man conquer passion? He should assume the attitude of a woman. I spent many days as the handmaid of God. I dressed myself in women's clothes, put on ornaments and covered the upper part of my body with a scarf, just like a woman. With the scarf on, I used to perform the evening worship before the image. Otherwise, how could I have kept my wife with me for 8 months? Both of us behaved as if we were the handmaid of the Divine Mother." God realization via various traditions. In 1860, Ramakrishna returned to Dakshineshwar and was again caught up in a spiritual tempest, forgetting his wife, home, body, and surroundings. He once described his experiences during this most tumultuous period of his life thus: "No sooner had I passed through one spiritual crisis than another took its place. It was like being in the midst of a whirlwind, even my sacred thread was blown away. I could seldom keep hold of my dhoti, cloth. Sometimes I would open my mouth, and it would be as if my jaws reached from heaven to the underworld. Mother, I would cry desperately. I felt I had to pull her in, as a fisherman pulls in fish with his dragnet. A prostitute walking the street would appear to me to be Sita, going to meet her victorious husband. An English boy standing cross-legged against a tree reminded me of the boy Krishna, and I lost consciousness. Sometimes I would share my food with a dog. My hair became matted. Birds would perch on my head and peck at the grains of rice which had lodged there during the worship. Snakes would crawl over my motionless body. An ordinary man couldn't have borne a quarter of that tremendous fervor, it would have burnt him up. I had no sleep at all for 6 long years. My eyes lost the power of winking." Ramakrishna grew up practicing bhakti towards Lord Rama, and his duties as a priest at the Dakshineshwar temple led him to practice worship of Mother Kali. While serving as a temple priest at Dakshineshwar, Ramakrishna would encounter various itinerant sadhus who would visit his place and stay there for a while. Practicing their own modes of worship, several of them initiated Ramakrishna into various schools of Hinduism. In the year 1861, a female ascetic named Bhairavi Brahmani initiated Ramakrishna into Tantra. Afterwards, he took up the practice of Vatsalya Bhava, attitude of a parent towards the divine child, under a Vaishnava guru named Jatadhari. In 1865, a Vedanta monk named Totapuri initiated Ramakrishna into sannyasa, and he attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi, considered as culmination of spiritual practices. In 1866, Govinda Roy, a Hindu guru who practiced Sufism, initiated Ramakrishna into Islam. Further, in 1873, Ramakrishna practiced Christianity and had the Bible read to him. After more than a decade of sadhana in various religious paths, each culminating in the realization of God by that path, his personal practices settled, and he is said to have remained in bhavamukha, a level of blissful samadhi. He would meditate in the Panchavati, a wooded and secluded area of the Dakshineshwar temple grounds, go to the Kali temple to offer flowers to the mother, and wave incense to the assorted deities and religious figures, whose pictures hung in his room. Rama Bhakti. At some point in the period between his vision of Kali and his marriage, Ramakrishna practiced Dasya Bhava, during which he worshipped Rama with the attitude of Hanuman, who is considered to be the ideal devotee and servant of Rama. According to Ramakrishna, towards the end of this sadhana, he had a vision of Sita, the consort of Rama, merging into his body. Bhairavi Brahmani, an ascetic who used to carry with her the Raghuvir Shila, a stone idol representing Lord Rama and all Vaishnava deities, who is also well versed in the texts of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, stated that Ramakrishna was experiencing a phenomenon that accompanies Mahabhava, the supreme attitude of loving devotion towards the divine, and quoting from the Bhakti Shastras, she stated that other religious figures like Radha and Chaitanya had similar experiences. Tantra focuses on the worship of Shakti, and the object of tantric training is to transcend the barriers between the holy and unholy as a means of achieving liberation and to see all aspects of the natural world as manifestations of the divine Shakti. In the year 1861, an itinerant middle-aged female ascetic named Bhairavi Brahmani initiated Ramakrishna into Tantra. Under her guidance, Ramakrishna went through 64 major tantric sadhanas which were completed in 1863. For all the 64 sadhana, he took only 3 days each to complete. He began with mantra rituals such as japa and puraskarna and many other rituals designed to purify the mind and establish self-control. He later proceeded towards tantric sadhanas, which generally include a set of heterodox practices called vamachara, left-hand path, which utilize as a means of liberation, activities like eating of parched grain, fish and meat along with drinking of wine and sexual intercourse. The Bhairavi also taught Ramakrishna the Kumari Puja, a form of ritual in which the virgin goddess is worshipped symbolically in the form of a young girl. Under the tutelage of the Bhairavi, Ramakrishna also learnt Kundalini Yoga. The Bhairavi, with the yogic techniques and the Tantra, played an important part in the initial spiritual development of Ramakrishna. Vaishnava Bhakti. In 1864, Ramakrishna practiced Vatsalya Bhava under a Vaishnava Guru Jatadhari. During this period, he worshipped a small metal image of Ramlala, Rama as a child, in the attitude of a mother. According to Ramakrishna, he could feel the presence of child Rama as a living god in the metal image. Ramakrishna later engaged in the practice of Madhura Bhava, the attitude of the gopis and Radha towards Krishna. During the practice of this bhava, Ramakrishna dressed himself in women's attire for several days and regarded himself as one of the gopis of Vrindavan. According to Ramakrishna, Madhura Bhava is one of the ways to root out the idea of sex, which is seen as an impediment in spiritual life. According to Ramakrishna, towards the end of this sadhana, he attained Savikalpa Samadhi, God seen with form and qualities, vision and union with Krishna. Ramakrishna visited Nadia, the home of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, the 15th century founders of Bengali Gaudiya Vaishnava Bhakti. According to Ramakrishna, he had an intense vision of 2 young boys merging into his body while he was crossing the river in a boat. Earlier, after his vision of Kali, he is said to have cultivated the Santa Bhava, the child attitude, towards Kali. Totapuri and Vedanta. Towards the end of 1864, an itinerant monk named Totapuri, the tall naked mendicant with tangled hair, a Naga sadhu of Mahanirvani Akhara, born probably in Punjab, arrived at Dakshineshwar while on a pilgrimage through various holy places in India. He was the head of a monastery and claimed leadership over 700 sannyasis. These sannyasis are renowned to be the knowers of Brahman, and as beings thoroughly satisfied in themselves, see the whole universe as Brahman and its manifestation through Maya. They are always on move, traveling to different pilgrimage places, visiting various temples and meeting holy men, in order to experience Brahman there. Totapuri was one such man who was on a similar visit when he arrived at Dakshineshwar. It was a traditional convention with him to not spend more than 3 days at any one place, and arrived at the Kali temple to spend only 3 days there. Initial meeting arriving at the temple ghat, Totapuri, getting a glimpse of the devotional face of Ramakrishna, stepped up to him wondering if he can be a fit aspirant for learning Vedanta in Bengal, which was then saturated with Tantra. After observing Ramakrishna rigorously, he asked him on his own volition if he's interested in practicing any Vedantic disciplines. Ramakrishna replied, "I know nothing of what I should do or not. My mother knows everything. I shall do as she commands." A startled Tota told him to go ask your mother, at which Ramakrishna silently went into the temple and returned ecstatically with a joyful face, and informed Tota that his mother said, "Go and learn. It is in order to teach you that the monk came here." Being aware that whom Ramakrishna was referring to as his mother was the idol of Devi in the temple, Tota, though fascinated at his childlike simplicity, opined his behavior was due to ignorance and false beliefs. Being a learned man, and of sharp intellect, Tota had no regard for any deity except for the Ishwar of Vedanta. He looked upon the Devi as a delusional figure and had no belief in her existence, much less worshipping or propitiating her. However, he did not say anything about it to Ramakrishna, as he felt his impressions of mind would anyway pass away soon once initiated into sannyasa. Initiation into sannyasa at the Panchavati, situated to the north of the temple garden, Ramakrishna was initiated into sannyasa by Totapuri. At the dawn of morning in the auspicious moment of Brahma Mahotsav, with the Homa fire lighted, he was guided through the various rites and ceremonies involved in the procedure of becoming a sannyasi. In accordance with the scriptural injunctions and tradition of successive generations, he offered as an oblation, to be free from the desire of having spouse, children, wealth, admiration from people, beautiful body and so on, and renounced them all. He then also offered his sacred thread and the tuft of hair on his head as part of the oblation. A pair of kaupanas, cloth covering worn over the privities, and an ochre cloth were then presented by the Guru Tota, to the sadhaka Ramakrishna, and was instructed thus. Brahman, the one substance which alone is eternally pure, eternally awakened, unlimited by time, space and causation, is absolutely real. Through Maya, which makes the impossible possible, it causes, by virtue of its influence, to seem that it is divided into names and forms. Brahman is never really so divided. For, at the time of Samadhi, not even a drop, so to say, of time and space, and name and form produced by Maya is perceived. Whatever, therefore, is within the bounds of name and form can never be absolutely real. Shun it by a good distance. Break the firm cage of name and form with the overpowering strength of a lion and come out of it. Dive deep into the reality of the self existing in yourself. Be one with it with the help of Samadhi. You will then see the universe consisting of name and form vanish, as it were, into the void. You will see the consciousness of the little I merge in that of the immense I, where it ceases to function, and you will have the immediate knowledge of the indivisible existence knowledge bliss as yourself. Experience of Samadhi, the Panchavati and the hut, where Ramakrishna performed his Advaitic sadhana. The mud hut has been replaced by a brick one. Quoting scriptures, Tota explained to his disciple the need to attain the non-dual consciousness, as it alone can provide a person the supreme bliss. Girding up his loins, he tried to enable his disciple experience the gains from his lifelong sadhana, right on that day, and attempted to make him attain samadhi. He asked his disciple to free his mind from all functions, and merge it in the meditation of the self. It so came to pass that when Ramakrishna sat for meditation, he could by no means make his mind stop from functioning. He would withdraw his mind easily from everything, but as soon as he did so, the intimately familiar form of the Divine Mother, made up of pure consciousness, would appear before him as a living and moving being, making him unmindful of renunciation. Over again, and becoming nearly hopeless, he said to his Guru, "No, it cannot be done. I cannot make the mind free from functioning and force it to dive into the self." Criticizing his disciple very harshly for his defiance, Tota now feverishly went about searching for, in the hut, and after finding a broken piece of glass, took it into his hand and forcibly pierced its needle-like pointed end on his disciple's forehead between the eyebrows and said, "Collect the mind here to this point with a firm determination." Ramakrishna, now determined, sat for meditation, and when as previously the form of the Divine Mother appeared before his mind, he immediately cut her mentally into two with the sword of knowledge. There remained then no function in the mind, which transcended quickly the realm of names and forms, making me merge in samadhi. After being near his disciple for a long time, who now entered into samadhi, Tota came out of the hut and locked its door lest someone may enter in. Taking his seat outside under the Panchavati, he awaited a call to open the door. Days passed by and nights rolled on, and at the end of 3 days, when there was no call, surprised and curious, he entered the hut and found Ramakrishna sitting in the exact same posture in which he left him, with no sign of breath whatsoever, and face being calm and radiant. Highly versed in the phenomena of samadhi, Tota was astonished and thought, "Is it indeed true, what I see enacted before me? Has this great soul actually realized in a day what I could experience only as the fruit of 40 years of austere sadhana?" In disbelief, he now began to examine and inspect in detail all the signs manifested in the body of Ramakrishna. He particularly examined if his heart was beating and whether there was the smallest amount of breath coming out through his nostrils. He touched and checked his body, which was now in a firm posture like a piece of fixed wood. Maya and the Divine Mother. After the experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Ramakrishna realized that the great weaver of Maya is none other than Kali, the Divine Mother herself, that she projects it by her will like a spider that spins a web out of itself, and she can no more be differentiated from Brahman than can the power of burning from fire. Observing Maya as a majestic and enigmatic statement of divinity, he was filled with reverence and love for it, unlike the disdain seen in other realized souls. He observed that Maya functions in the world in two ways and named them as Avidya Maya and Vidya Maya. Considering Avidya Maya to be represented by the lower forces like evil, greed, cruelty etc., which consign a man to the lower level of existence, and Vidya Maya to be represented by the higher forces like kindness, love and devotion, which elevate a man to the higher levels of existence, he felt that when an individual with the help of Vidya Maya could rid himself of Avidya Maya, he would become emdetita or free of Maya. He realized these two facets of Maya to be the two forces of creation, the two powers of Kali, who stands beyond them both, like the beaming sun behind the clouds of different colors and patterns, and shines through them all. Instead of looking upon the world as an illusion of Brahman as per Vedanta, Ramakrishna looked upon it as the manifestation of the Divine Mother. He further elaborated his view on the Brahman of Vedanta and the Divine Mother of Tantra thus, "When I think of the Supreme Being as inactive, neither creating nor preserving nor destroying, I call him Brahman or Purusha, the impersonal God. When I think of him as active, creating, preserving, and destroying, I call him Sakti or Maya or Prakriti, the personal God." But the distinction between them does not mean a difference. The personal and the impersonal are the same thing, like milk and its whiteness, the diamond and its luster, the snake and its wriggling motion. Totapuri, humbled having seen the rapid progress of Ramakrishna in the Vedantic path, Totapuri now started to have many serious discussions with him over the devotion to Divine Mother in the Vedantic Brahman. During the course of one such lively discussion, a servant of the temple garden visited them and took a piece of charcoal, so as to light his tobacco, from the pit of the sacred Dhuni fire, which was lit by the great ascetic himself. At this instance, Tota flew into rage and began to threaten the man, while Ramakrishna, who was sitting aside, fell on the ground rolling in laughter, seeing how powerful the influence of Maya was over the behavior of Tota, as he was until then talking about how everything is Brahman and all people are its manifestations, but forgot everything and got angry at the man. Tota, feeling embarrassed, vowed never to be angry again. Ramakrishna would go on to say, caught in the net of 5 elements, Brahman weeps, and that no amount of self-knowledge will make the life of a man better until the grace of God is bestowed on him through the power of Maya. After staying in Bengal province for a while, the revered Totapuri, who until then had never had any illness in his life, caught dysentery, which made his life quite miserable. Thinking about taking his leave and moving away, he approached Ramakrishna, but every time he did so he would either forget to mention it, or would feel prevented from speaking by someone within him, and would go back hesitantly. Seeing his frail body, and knowing about his condition, Ramakrishna with help of Mathur arranged for a special diet and medicines, all to no avail. Being well versed in meditation, Totapuri used to merge his mind into samadhi at will and thus avoid feeling the pain in his body. All the way to almost other side of the bank. Baffled that there seemed to be not enough water in the river to drown himself, he looked back, to find, in one dazzling vision, the sight of the Divine Mother, the one beyond Turiya, filling up all the space round him. Feeling awed and realizing that the Brahman he had been worshipping all his life was none other than the Divine Mother herself, with a grateful heart he turned back, and spent the remaining night, meditating on the Divine Mother near the Dhuni under Panchavati. When Ramakrishna met him in the morning to inquire about his health, he was found a totally different person with no more illness. Reflecting on how imprudent he was to not accept the Divine Mother, Tota explained to him the events that transpired the night before, and that by the grace of the Mother, he was now free from his disease. Ramakrishna, with a smile said, "Well, you did not accept the Mother before and argued with me saying that Shakti was unreal. But you have now seen her yourself and direct experience has got the better of your arguments. She has convinced me already of the fact that just as fire and its burning power are not different, so, Brahman and the power of Brahman are not different, but one and the same." Tota then asked Ramakrishna to exhort her to give him permission to leave, as he now realized that was her will that he, who had never spent more than 3 days at a place, had spent 11 months there. Both of them then visited the temple and Tota, who until then considered the image of the Devi as a delusion, prostrated himself in front of her idol, along with Ramakrishna. A few days later, he took leave and left Dakshineshwar. It was his first and the last visit to that place. Perception in Samadhi. Sometime after the departure of Totapuri from Dakshineshwar, Ramakrishna, owing to his lack of any restraining elements in life or desires in the world, decided to dwell in the plane of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. As he attempted to do so, once again the form of the Divine Mother, beautiful, more beautiful than the most, started appearing in front of his mind, and he, not having the heart to leave her behind and go ahead, would return. After much internal deliberation, with great courage, he again, while meditating, took up knowledge as the sword and cut her form into 2, and there was nothing left in the mind then, and it rushed quickly up to the complete Nirvikalapa state. Ramakrishna remained in the Nirvikalapa state continually for a period of 6 months, a state of perception said to be from which no ordinary person returns, as the body would then fall dead after 21 days, like a dry leaf from a tree. He remained unconscious of the outer world throughout this period, and stayed put like a dead man, with matted hair and flies moving through his mouth and nostrils. He might have passed away then if not for the untiring efforts of an unknown monk, who happened to be present in Dakshineshwar at the time, and who, on recognizing the state in which Ramakrishna was, thought his body must be kept alive for the betterment of the world as the work of the mother is still to be done with it, and made attempts every day to bring it back to awareness by beating him with a stick, and feeding him in the resulting fleeting moments of consciousness, which though appeared very rarely for a few moments on some days. This period of being in the Nirvikalapa state came to an end after Ramakrishna received a command from the mother to remain in Bhava Mukha, a state of consciousness bordering between being absorbed into the absolute and remaining in the relative world, for the sake of enlightening people. He then firmed his awareness at the sixth chakra of Tantra, and lived with his consciousness oscillating between being either absorbed into the impersonal absolute, or remaining in personal devotion to the mother. Later in his life, it was observed that while talking about or listening to subjects related to God, Ramakrishna, with his face beaming a smile and body turning radiant, would become noticeably stiff and unconscious. When one of his disciples asked him why does it happen so and what does he experience in that state, Ramakrishna smiled and replied, "Well, it is called samadhi, the culmination of meditation. I borrow 1/16th part of the mind from the Divine Mother and talk and laugh with you, but the remaining portion rests with the Mother, meditating on her real essence as existence, knowledge, bliss absolute. When I talk or hear about the Mother, the whole mind goes to the absolute and samadhi immediately ensues." Do you know what samadhi really is? It is complete absorption in Brahman. Do you know how I feel at that time? Suppose there is a basin of water on the seashore and a fish is confined in it. If the basin is accidentally broken, the fish finds its way to the unfathomable ocean. It then frolics in the height of joy, doesn't it? Similarly, during samadhi my mind leaps out of this body, as it were, and plunges into existence, knowledge, bliss absolute. Hence the body appears like that. In other words, there is no body consciousness, and the soul merges in the higher self, the Paramatman, in the thousand-petaled lotus of the head and experiences unspeakable bliss. That experience sends a wave of divine bliss to the face and the body becomes radiant. This very self then becomes Shiva, the Absolute. The periods of samadhi would later become a regular part in the life of Ramakrishna, and people near him used to find him in a state of samadhi every now and then, sometimes for almost 24 hours a day. Once a government official found him remaining in a state of ecstasy, straight for 3 days and 3 nights. When found deeply absorbed in samadhi for a long period of time, his devotees would rub cow ghee on his spine from neck to the lower back, and on knees down to the soles of his feet, pulling in a downward direction, so as to bring him back to the plane of normal consciousness. Ramakrishna used to say that the natural tendency of his mind is towards the nirvikalpa plane, and once in samadhi, he would not be inclined to come back to the normal plane of consciousness, but would return for the sake of his devotees, and sometimes even this will was not enough, so he would fill his mind with trivial desires like, I will smoke tobacco, I will drink water, I will take this, I will see so and so, I will talk, and by repeatedly saying such things to his mind, he would make it gradually return to the plane of body consciousness. He would later often tell his devotees to tie the knowledge of non-duality in the corner of your cloth and then do whatever you want. Islam and Christianity. In 1866, Govinda Roy, a Hindu man who was previously initiated into Islam and practiced Sufism, initiated Ramakrishna into Islam. Ramakrishna learned about Govinda through the latter's regular visits to Dakshineshwar. Being much impressed by seeing the faith and love for God in Govinda, Ramakrishna decided to practice Islam, reasoning, this also is a path to realization of God. The sportive mother, the source of infinite Leela, has been blessing many people with the attainment of her lotus feet through this path also. I must see how through it she makes those who take refuge in her attain their desired end. Ramakrishna engaged himself in the practice of Islam according to its prescribed rules. He devotedly repeated the name of Allah and said their prayers 5 times a day and remained in that state of mind for 3 days, after which he had full realization through their path. During this practice, Ramakrishna had a vision of a luminous figure, and Swami Nikhilananda's biography speculates that the figure was perhaps Muhammad. According to these accounts, Ramakrishna devoutly repeated the name of Allah, wore a cloth like the Arab Muslims, said their prayer 5 times daily, and felt disinclined even to see images of the Hindu gods and goddesses, much less worship them, for the Hindu way of thinking had disappeared altogether from my mind. After 3 days of practice he had a vision of a radiant personage with grave countenance and white beard resembling the Prophet and merging with his body. He opined this vision to be of the all-pervasive Brahman with attributes, as the vision eventually ended with him merging into the attributeless absolute Brahman. Kirapal writes that this would have been a heretical experience through and through for most Muslims. After his experience of practicing Islam, Ramakrishna opined that knowledge of Vedanta can make Hindus and Muslims sympathetic to one another as there is, as it were, a mountain of difference between them. Their thoughts and faiths, actions and behavior have remained quite unintelligible to one another in spite of their living together for so long a time. Christianity. At the end of 1873, Ramakrishna started the practice of Christianity. After one of his devotee named Sambhu Chandra Malak read the Bible to him, he got well acquainted with the life and teachings of Jesus. Once when the Bible was being read out to him, from the very beginning there were references to the doctrine of sin. After hearing a little and finding that it talked of nothing but sin, he refused to listen to it any more further, saying, just as in the case of snakebite, if the patient can be made to believe that there is no poison at all, he will be all right. Similarly, if one constantly thinks, I have taken the name of the Lord, so I am sinless, one becomes pure. He ideated that more we give up such ideas as, I am sinful, I am weak, the better it will be for all, as we all are children of God, thus not weak and sinful, and considered thinking of oneself as weak and sinful to be the greatest sin. In 1874, Ramakrishna experienced a strange vision at the parlor of Jadu Malik's garden house, situated to the south of Kali temple in Dakshineshwar. He was sitting there and looking keenly at a picture of Madonna and child hanging on the wall, when all of a sudden he saw it come to life with effulgent rays of light emerging from the image and merging into his heart. A few days later, while walking in the Panchavati, he reportedly had a vision of Jesus coming towards him, embracing and merging into his body. At this moment he reportedly lost his normal consciousness, entered into trance and remained for some time identified with the all-pervasive Brahman with attributes. In his own room amongst other divine pictures was one of Christ, and he burnt incense before it morning and evening. There was also a picture showing Jesus Christ saving Saint Peter from drowning in the water. Popularization and final years Keshab Chandra Sen and the New Dispensation, Ramakrishna in Bhava Samadhi after singing about Kali. His nephew Hriday, supporting him, started uttering Om in his ear, bringing him back to normal consciousness. With Brahmo Samaj devotees at the house of Keshab Chandra Sen, the 21st of September 1879. In 1875, Ramakrishna met the influential Brahmo Samaj leader Keshab Chandra. Senator Keshab had accepted Christianity, and had separated from the Adi Brahmo Samaj. Formally, Keshab had rejected idolatry, but under the influence of Ramakrishna he accepted Hindu polytheism and established the New Dispensation, Nava Vidhan, religious movement, based on Ramakrishna's principles, worship of God as mother, all religions as true, and assimilation of Hindu polytheism into Brahmoism. Keshav also publicized Ramakrishna's teachings in the journals of New Dispensation over a period of several years, which was instrumental in bringing Ramakrishna to the attention of a wider audience, especially the Bhadralok, English-educated classes of Bengal, and the Europeans residing in India. Following Keshav, other Brahmos such as Vijay Krishna Goswami started to admire Ramakrishna, propagate his ideals and reorient their socio-religious outlook. Many prominent people of Kolkata, Pratap Chandra Mazumdar, Shivanath Shastri and Tralokyanath Sanyal, began visiting him during this time, 1871 to 1885. Mazumdar wrote the first English biography of Ramakrishna, entitled The Hindu Saint in the Theistic Quarterly Review, 1879, which played a vital role in introducing Ramakrishna to Westerners like the German Indologist Max Muller. Newspapers reported that Ramakrishna was spreading love and devotion among the educated classes of Kolkata and that he had succeeded in reforming the character of some youths whose morals had been corrupt. Ramakrishna also had interactions with Debendranath Tagore, the father of Rabindranath Tagore, and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, a renowned social worker. He had also met Swami Dayananda. Ramakrishna is considered one of the main contributors to the Bengali Renaissance. Vivekanand main article, Relationship between Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekanand. Some monastic disciples, Trigunatitananda, Shivananda, Vivekanand, Turiyananda, Brahmananda. Below Saradananda. Among the Europeans who were influenced by Ramakrishna was Principal Dr. William Hastie of the Scottish Church College, Kolkata. In the course of explaining the word trance in the poem The Excursion by William Wordsworth, Hastie told his students that if they wanted to know its real meaning, they should go to Ramakrishna of Dakshineshwar. This prompted some of his students, including Narendranath Datta, later Swami Vivekanand, to visit Ramakrishna. Despite initial reservations, Vivekanand became Ramakrishna's most influential follower, popularizing a modern interpretation of Indian traditions which harmonized Tantra, Yoga and Advaita Vedanta. Vivekanand established the Ramakrishna order, which eventually spread its mission posts throughout the world. Monastic disciples, who renounced their family and became the earliest monks of the Ramakrishna order, included Rakhal Chandra Ghosh, Swami Brahmananda, Kali Prasad Chandra, Swami Abhedananda, Taraknath Ghoshal, Swami Shivananda, Sashibhushan Chakravarti, Swami Ramakrishnananda, Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, Swami Saradananda, Tulasi Charan Datta, Swami Nirmalananda, Gangadhar Ghatak, Swami Akhandananda, Hari Prasanna, Swami Vijayananda, Swami Turiyananda and others. आपके प्यार और सहयोग के लिए हम आभारी हैं। कृपया चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, लाइक करें, शेयर करें और कमेंट करें। धन्यवाद।